I make this departure from white whiskey, and I come out with a collection of essays. My wife tells me I'm a novelist, and that's why she really wants to see this second book, The Sequel to Paper Puzzle. But when I started writing, even as a young kid, um, one of my favorite writers was James Baldwin, and so I've always pictured myself as an essayist, and I always wanted to be an essayist because I loved the prose of James Baldwin, and I love the rhythm of how he wrote, and I learned to read by reading him, a guy who only had a high school education. But if you read his sentences, if any of you are school teachers, and you've ever required, or even students growing up in our day, you had to diagram sentences. And if you take one of those long sentences of James Baldwin, they are perfect. If you diagram them, grammatically, he's correct. And so I learned to read, and I learned to write. I learned to diagram sentences by reading James Baldwin early in my life. So I fashioned myself as an essay. That's what I've always wanted to be, and I've never done that. So Justice in the Round gives me the opportunity, or gave me the opportunity to reach that dream. So that being said, if there are any questions or comments, or
How did you, what does that mean, justice in the round? How did you come up with that?
very good question. I'm a colored Methodist.
Josh, you're what?
A colored Methodist.
Okay.
Well, you see, we call ourselves Christian Methodist Episcopal Church.
Yeah, we know.
But in 1870, we were founded in Jackson, Tennessee in 1870. And we were colored Methodists. And so I'm a colored Methodist. Yes, ma'am.
And then they didn't want to keep being colored. We were fine with color.
We were, and when the Methodist Church South split with the Methodist Church North in 1860. So after the war, the colored still continued to worship with the whites. And so in 1870, the whites said, well, maybe we need to separate. And so they have to organize this conference in Jackson, and set us up and actually gave us property. So that was probably the difference between us and the African American Episcopal Church. They left, and although they are a bigger church body than the CMEs today, they didn't start out with any property, but the white Methodist Church North granted us property and helped us to build churches throughout primarily the southeast United States at that point in time. And in 1956, Bishop Kirkendall was studying at the University of Chicago in the School of Religion, of their theology up there. And one of his professors, who was white or Jewish, said to him that that he couldn't come and attend his church. And he said, well, why? He said, because you all are colored Methodists. And so then Bishop Kirkendall then came back to the body and began this movement to change the name from Colored Methodist to Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. So coming out of my Colored Methodist background, every year the church sends the pastor to conference, and so the pastor has to get up and give a report. And so all of the obligations that the conference has assessed to that church, he wants to go to that conference and give what is known as a round report. Okay. That means that he has made all of his obligations. If he was assessed $10,000, he's paid that in full, in round.
We have to hear that a whole year to get that round.
that round number 0. So, and what is justice? Justice doesn't have any breakage here. And in order for us to get justice, it has to become whole. It has to be round. It has to be rounded off. and give us that roundness. So we want justice in the round, because there's no breakage in justice. Justice only knows that which is just. It knows an injustice, because an injustice is not justice. So that's how I came up with the title, drawing upon my Southern religious spiritual heritage of being a colored Methodist. And what I knew about the preacher having to go out and make that round report, we want justice in the round. We want a full accounting of justice unto the law of God. That's what's very good.